My sister looked her boyfriend dead in the eye and told him I was a family friend who helps out sometimes. I was standing 10 feet away, in my parents' living room, at Christmas dinner. He shook my hand like I was a stranger, smiled politely, and moved on. And I just stood there holding the appetizer tray I'd spent an hour preparing, realizing my own sister had just erased me from her life, and I didn't even know why yet. Before I continue with my story, it really helps to know that someone out there is listening. So if this is resonating with you in any way, or if it simply caught your attention, please let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, or just say hello. There's something incredibly comforting about knowing I'm not alone in this. Thanks a lot. Now, back to the story. The invitation was ivory cardstock with gold foil, the kind that costs $3 just to mail. I found it in the trash behind our mother's house, tucked underneath coffee grounds and a yogurt container. I wasn't snooping. The recycling bin was full and I was trying to help before I left, which was always my mistake, trying to help. It was for the Hendersons' 40th anniversary party. The Hendersons had lived next door to my parents for 12 years. I'd mowed their lawn every summer in high school. I'd gone to their daughter's graduation party. And apparently, my mother had been invited, responded for two, and thrown the invitation away before I could see it. I set it on the kitchen counter, still damp from the coffee grounds, and waited. She came in carrying a colander of green beans from the garden, her reading glasses pushed up into her hair. She saw it and stopped. "That's trash," she said. "It's an invitation. It's old. The party's Saturday." She set the colander in the sink and ran the water like that was the conversation she wanted to be having. "Vivian's coming with me. She needs to meet their son. He works in venture capital." I wasn't asking to go instead of her. "There's a head count." "Right." I picked up my keys from the counter. "Tell the Hendersons I said hi." "Don't be dramatic, Marin." I was already in the doorway, but that stopped me. Dramatic. That was the word my mother used when I noticed things, pointed things out, when I failed to pretend along with everyone else. "I'm not dramatic," I said. "I just found your garbage." She didn't answer. I drove back to my apartment in Covington, 40 minutes through farm country and strip malls, and I told myself it didn't matter. A party was just a party. Vivian needed to network. That was how she'd put it, probably. Vivian was always networking, always building something, always the one with somewhere to be and someone to impress. I was 31 years old. I had a job I was good at. I did compliance auditing for a mid-sized accounting firm, which meant I spent my days finding the places where things didn't add up. I had a 2-bedroom apartment with decent light and a cat named Hector who only liked me when he was hungry. I had a life. Not a glamorous one, but a real one. And still, every time I went home, I left feeling like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. When we were kids, Vivian used to wait until I'd finished telling a story at dinner and then say, "That's not really how it happened, though." Just that. Said with a little smile, like she was being helpful, like she was saving everyone from my version. Our parents believed her. They always believed her. Vivian spoke with such confidence that it felt rude to question her, and I'd learned by the time I was 10 that fighting back only made me look worse. So I stopped. I went quiet instead. I became the sister who didn't talk much at family dinners, who read books in the corner at parties, who everyone said was probably fine, just shy. I wasn't shy. I was watching. By the time we were adults, we'd settled into something that looked like a normal sibling relationship from the outside. We texted sometimes. We saw each other at holidays. She remembered my birthday about half the time. I went to her housewarming when she bought her condo in Portland, and I sat through 3 hours of her friends talking about juice cleanses without saying anything because that was easier than trying to fit in. She was in marketing, brand strategy for tech startups, which meant she spent her life making things sound better than they were. She was good at it. I never doubted that. What I doubted was whether she could tell the difference anymore, whether there was still a version of her underneath all the positioning, or if she'd polished herself so smooth that nothing real was left. I found out about Owen in December, at my parents' house for Christmas. Vivian was late, which she always was, and when she finally arrived, she had a man with her. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with sandy hair going gray at the temples and a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He shook my father's hand and called him sir. He carried a bottle of wine that was clearly expensive and presented it like a gift instead of a hostess obligation. My mother nearly melted. I was setting out the appetizer plates when they came in. Vivian's arm was looped through Owen's, and she was steering him toward our parents like a yacht captain navigating a channel she knew by heart. She said his name, Owen Whitfield, and I saw my mother's eyebrows lift slightly. The Whitfield name meant something, apparently. Old wine country money. I went back to the kitchen for the napkins. When I came out, Vivian was deep in conversation with our mother about the vineyard Owen's family owned. Owen was nodding along, answering questions about acreage and varietals, and then his eyes found mine across the room. He smiled, just a polite smile, the kind you give anyone at a party. I nodded back. "Who's that?" I heard him ask Vivian, his voice low but not low enough. "My mom's friend's daughter," Vivian said smoothly. "She helps out sometimes." Owen glanced at me again, then turned back to my father to discuss something about golf handicaps. I stood there holding napkins, watching my sister introduce her boyfriend to everyone in the room except me. Later, when Owen went to the bathroom, I cornered Vivian by the Christmas tree. "Mom's friend's daughter." She didn't even blink. "It's easier." "Easier than what?" "Than explaining." She adjusted an ornament that didn't need adjusting. "His family is very close, old-fashioned. They want to know everything about everyone. I didn't want him bombarded with questions about siblings and family dynamics before he even got through the door." "So you just pretended I don't exist?" "I'm not pretending anything. I just didn't make a big introduction. It's a crowded room. People get missed." "Vivian." "Marin," her voice dropped. "Can you just let me have one nice night without you making everything complicated?" Owen came back from the bathroom. Vivian's face transformed, the tension gone, replaced by warmth and light and everything she'd refused to give me. "Ready for more wine?" she asked him. "Always." They moved toward the kitchen together. Owen's hand found the small of her back, easy and familiar. I watched him work the room for the rest of the evening, watched how he talked to my father about sports and my mother about her garden, how he laughed at their jokes and listened to their stories. He was good at people in a way that seemed genuine rather than performed. Once, near the end of the night, he caught me watching from the corner where I'd retreated with my wine. He lifted his glass slightly, a small acknowledgement, and I wondered what Vivian had told him about the woman sitting alone at her family's Christmas party. Nothing good, probably. Nothing at all. The engagement came in February. Vivian called our parents first, and then she sent a group text to me and 3 of her friends announcing it with a photo of the ring. It was a vintage cut, emerald center with diamonds around it, the kind of thing you see in estate sales. Beautiful. I texted back congratulations and a heart emoji, because that was what you were supposed to do. She didn't respond. Over the next few weeks, I heard details secondhand, from my mother, from the newsletter my aunt sent out every month with family updates, from social media posts I wasn't tagged in. The wedding would be in October. They were looking at venues in wine country. Vivian wanted something intimate but elegant. I waited for the call asking me to be a bridesmaid, or the text, or even the passing mention. It didn't come. In March, I drove up for my father's birthday. My mother had made a pot roast, and Vivian was there with Owen, and the conversation was all wedding all the time. The venue had been booked, a vineyard in Willamette Valley. The photographer was someone who'd shot for a magazine. The florist was doing something architectural with branches. "Have you thought about bridesmaids?" my mother asked. Vivian was cutting her pot roast into precise squares. "I'm keeping it small, just Harper and Corrine." Harper was her college roommate. Corrine was a woman from her Pilates studio who she'd known for maybe a year. "That'll be lovely," my mother said. Nobody looked at me. Owen was talking to my father about something. I wasn't listening, but I noticed his eyes flick toward me once, just briefly, like he was trying to place me in the picture and couldn't find where I fit. I ate my pot roast and listened to them discuss escort cards and rehearsal dinner locations. And when Owen said something about wanting his grandmother there, Vivian reached over and squeezed his hand. "Of course," she said. "She's important to you." I wondered if I was important to anyone at that table. I should have confronted them, should have stood up and said something, demanded to know why I was being treated like furniture. But I'd been doing the math in my head for years, and the equation never came out in my favor. If I pushed, Vivian would make me the problem. She'd tell our parents I was being difficult, jealous, dramatic, and they'd believe her because they always believed her, and I'd end up more isolated than I started. So I kept quiet, drove home after dessert, sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the dashboard. The problem with absorbing it, with swallowing everything year after year, is that you start to believe you deserve it, that maybe you really are the difficult one, the one who doesn't fit. I was good at absorbing, too good. But that dinner was different. Maybe it was watching Vivian plan the most elaborate event of her life and not even pretend to consider me. Maybe it was Owen, sitting there with his easy smile, believing whatever version of our family she'd sold him. Maybe it was my mother, who'd stopped even pretending that the imbalance wasn't intentional. I didn't know what to do with any of it, so I did what I always did. Nothing. In April, my mother called to ask if I was coming to Easter. I was planning on it. Good, Owen's family might stop by for dessert. My stomach did something strange. His family. His mother and grandmother. They're in town visiting, and Vivian thought it would be nice for everyone to meet. I'd been around Owen 4 times now, and had never once heard Vivian mention meeting his family to me. I'd assumed it just hadn't happened yet. "I'll be there," I said. "Wear something nice. Margaret, that's the grandmother, she's very traditional." I wore a blue dress that my mother had once said brought out my eyes. I arrived early to help with the cooking, which I always did, even though Vivian never did. I set the table and folded napkins into little fans the way my mother liked. And then, an hour before dinner, Vivian called. My mother answered in the kitchen. I was in the dining room, close enough to hear her side. "What do you mean? But they're expecting. Well, can't you reschedule the—" "No, I understand, of course. Family first." She hung up and came into the dining room. Her face was strange, tight around the mouth. "Change of plans," she said. "Owen's mother isn't feeling well. They're going back to their hotel." "So they're not coming?" "No." "Is the mother okay?" "It's just a headache. Vivian's going to stay with them tonight. Make sure Margaret has everything she needs." I looked at the table, 12 place settings. Should I redo the settings? No, leave it. Maybe some of the neighbors will stop by. They didn't. We ate Easter dinner, me, my parents, and the ghost of the celebration that was supposed to happen. My father talked about the Mariners. My mother talked about her book club. Nobody mentioned Vivian or Owen or the mysterious headache that had rearranged everyone's plans. Later, I helped wash dishes while my mother dried. "Have you met Margaret?" I asked, casual, light. "Twice. She's very elegant. Old money, you know, the kind that doesn't show off." "She sounds nice." My mother paused, a plate in her hands. "Vivian says she can be difficult, particular. She's very protective of Owen." "That makes sense. I'm sure you'll meet her at the wedding." "If I'm invited," I didn't say. I drove home wondering why Vivian's future in-laws had been in town for 3 days, and I hadn't heard a word about it until 2 hours before they were supposed to appear. Wondering why a headache had been enough to cancel everything. Wondering what, exactly, Vivian was protecting them from. Or protecting from them. The summer went by in a blur of small slights that I tried not to catalog. Vivian's bridal shower was in June. I found out about it from Instagram 3 days after it happened. My mother mentioned casually that she'd seen the venue in August. Vivian gave me a private tour. and looked almost surprised when I said I hadn't been invited. "I'm sure she just forgot," my mother said. "She's so stressed with the planning." "Sure. You know how she gets." I did know. That was the problem. In September, I finally asked directly. I'd driven up for Labor Day, and Vivian was there, showing our mother fabric swatches for the reception tablecloths. Owen wasn't with her. He was visiting his grandmother in San Francisco for the long weekend. I waited until Vivian went to the bathroom, then turned to our mother. "Am I invited to the wedding?" She blinked. "What?" "I haven't gotten an invitation. Save the date, anything." "Of course you're invited." She laughed like I'd said something absurd. "You're her sister." "Then why hasn't she mentioned it?" "She's busy, Marin. You know how these things are. The planning takes over." "It's 6 weeks away." My mother didn't answer. She looked down at the fabric swatches, arranged in a gradient from champagne to rose. When Vivian came back, I tried a different approach. "Do you need help with anything for the wedding? Addressing envelopes, assembling favors, anything?" Vivian looked at me like I'd offered to perform surgery. "That's sweet, but we have it handled. We hired a coordinator." I could still help. "It's really fine," she smiled. "You just focus on showing up." "Showing up where?" I wanted to scream. "You haven't told me where or when." But I didn't. I just nodded and let it go because that was what I always did. The call came 2 weeks before the wedding. I was at work, in the middle of an audit that had revealed some genuinely creative accounting practices, when my phone buzzed with a call from Vivian. She never called, texted occasionally, called never. I stepped into the hallway. "Hey." "Mare, hi." Her voice was strange, too bright. "I wanted to check in about the wedding." "Okay." "So, you know how we're keeping it small." "You mentioned that." "We've had to make some tough decisions. About the guest list." I leaned against the wall. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. "Right. The venue has a capacity issue. We can only do 80 people, and with Owen's family and the essential guests." She trailed off. I waited. "I'm not coming," I said, not a question. "It's not that you're not invited, it's just, logistically, there isn't space. We tried everything, moving tables, adjusting the layout, but the fire code." "You don't have to explain." "Mare." "It's fine." "I knew you'd understand." Relief flooded her voice. "You're always so reasonable. I told him Marin won't make this into a thing. She'll get it." "I get it." "We'll have you over for dinner after. When we're back from the honeymoon, do something special." "Sounds good." "You're the best, really." She paused. "And don't mention this to Mom, okay? She doesn't know we had to cut people. I don't want her to feel bad." "Mom doesn't know I'm not invited." She assumes you are, and correcting her would be a whole conversation. You know how she is." I knew exactly how she was. "Sure," I said, "our secret." "You're the best," she said again, and then she was gone. I stood in that hallway for 5 minutes, the phone still in my hand. My chest felt tight, not with anger, not exactly. Something flatter than that. Something that had been building for years without a name and now suddenly had one. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't difficult. I wasn't any of the things they'd trained me to be afraid of being. I was just done. I called in sick the next day, something I never did, and drove 4 hours to Portland. I didn't know what I was planning. Confrontation, maybe. Proof. Some part of me still believed that if I could just show my parents, just demonstrate it clearly enough, they'd finally see. They'd finally choose me. The parking lot of Vivian's building was full, but I found a spot on the street. Her condo was on the 3rd floor, all glass and exposed brick, the kind of place that cost more per month than I made in 2. I didn't go up. I just sat in my car, watching the entrance, trying to figure out what I'd even say. And then I saw them. Vivian and Owen coming out of the building. They were dressed for something, him in a blazer, her in a dress I'd seen tagged in a boutique post last week. They were laughing about something, heads bent together, and for a moment I felt like I was watching strangers. They got into Owen's car and pulled out of the lot. I followed them. I don't know why. It wasn't a plan. It was something more instinctive than that, some need to see where they went, what they did, who they were when I wasn't supposed to be watching. They drove for 40 minutes into wine country, past rows of vines just starting to turn gold with fall. They pulled into a driveway marked by a stone pillar, and I slowed, stopped on the shoulder, watched them disappear down a tree-lined lane. I pulled up the address on my phone, the Thornwood Estate, wine tastings and event bookings available. This was the venue, 80-person capacity, she'd said, fire code limitations. I turned around and drove to a coffee shop I'd seen a mile back, ordered a latte I didn't drink, pulled up the Thornwood Estate website on my phone. Their events page showed a photo gallery. Weddings, corporate retreats, private parties. One image caught my eye, a reception in progress, tables everywhere, guests filling a space that looked like it could hold 200 people easy. I scrolled down to the FAQ. Capacity. The main hall accommodates up to 200 guests for seated dinners. I read it twice, 3 times. 80 people, fire code. She'd lied. Not exaggerated, not stretched the truth, flat out lied. The reasonable thing to do would have been to confront her. Call her up, tell her I knew, demand an explanation or an apology or both. But I'd been reasonable my whole life. I'd been understanding and accommodating and willing to give the benefit of the doubt. And where had it gotten me? Uninvited to my own sister's wedding while she lied to my face about why. So I did something else instead. I booked a trip. 2 weeks in New Zealand. Mountains and ocean and as much distance as I could put between myself and whatever was going to happen on October 15th. I found a small hotel in Queenstown, the kind of place that advertised silence and seclusion, and I paid for it with the money I'd been saving for, I don't know, a house someday, a future that kept getting pushed further away. I told my boss I was taking vacation, told my friends I needed to clear my head, told nobody else anything because there was nobody else to tell. The week before I left, my mother called. Vivian says you have a work trip. I was packing. Hiking boots, thermal layers, a book I'd been meaning to read for 2 years. Did she? During the wedding. That's too bad. Can't you reschedule? This is her wedding, Marin. I looked at the suitcase on my bed, the careful piles, the plane ticket printed on my nightstand. I can't, I said. But, Mom, I can't, I'm sorry. This is going to break her heart. I almost laughed. I almost told her everything. The capacity lie, the bridal shower I wasn't invited to, the years of being positioned as the problem, the difficult one, the dramatic one. But I didn't. Tell her I'm sorry, I said instead. Tell her I hope it's beautiful. I hung up, finished packing, and drove to the airport the next morning. New Zealand was exactly what I needed, and nothing I expected. I'd imagined peace. Quiet contemplation in some mountain vista, working through my feelings like a movie montage. Instead, I mostly just existed. Woke up early. Hiked until my legs ached. Ate dinner alone in the hotel restaurant, reading my book, listening to conversations in languages I didn't understand. I didn't think about Vivian. I didn't think about the wedding. I didn't think about what was happening back home while I was watching the sun set over Lake Wakatipu, the mountains turning pink, and then purple, and then a blue so dark it looked like the edge of the world. On day 5, I turned off my phone. Not dramatically, not as a statement. I just didn't feel like looking at it anymore. The hotel had a landline if there was an emergency. Everything else could wait. I hiked the Raudeburn track, got caught in rain and huddled under a rock overhang for an hour, watching the water sheet down around me. I took a boat to an island covered in native birds, species I'd never heard of, making sounds that didn't seem possible. I read my book and started another one. Slept deeply, dreamlessly for the first time in months. By day 15, something had shifted. Not healed, not resolved, but shifted. The constant tightness in my chest was gone. I was just a person in a place, doing things, existing without performance. I extended my trip, 5 more days. The hotel had availability, I had the vacation time. There was nothing to rush home to. On day 19, there was a knock on my door. I'd just gotten back from dinner. It was late, almost 10, and I was in my pajamas already, the heavy wool ones I'd bought in town because my California layers weren't cutting it. The hotel manager was in the hallway. A woman named Janet Mowry, with silver hair and kind eyes. I'd talked to her a few times at breakfast. "Ms. Calloway, I'm sorry to disturb you. Is everything okay?" "There's been a woman calling the front desk. Several times today. She says it's urgent." My first thought was my mother. Something had happened to my father. A heart attack, an accident. Did she leave a name? She wouldn't give one. She just kept calling. She left a number and asked that you call back tonight, no matter how late. Janet handed me a slip of paper. A U.S. number with a Bay area code. Not my mother's. Not anyone's I recognized. "Thank you," I said. I closed the door and stood there, looking at the number. My phone was still off, stuffed in a drawer. I hadn't looked at it in 2 weeks. I picked up the room phone and dialed. It rang 3 times before someone answered. "You're not dead," a woman's voice, older, sharp, with no nonsense in it whatsoever. "Excuse me." I knew it. I told them. I told them something was wrong. "I'm sorry, who is this?" A pause, then. "My name is Margaret Whitfield. I'm Owen's grandmother." The name landed somewhere in the back of my brain. Margaret, the elegant one, the difficult one, the one Vivian was always protecting Owen's family from. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important right now. What's important is that I've been trying to reach you for 3 days, and you've been impossible to find. Where are you?" "New Zealand." A sharp exhale that might have been a laugh. "Of course you are. Vivian said you were always running away." "I'm not running away from anything." "No, I don't think you are." I sat down on the edge of the bed, the phone cord stretching across the room. My heart was doing something strange. "Why are you calling me?" Another pause, longer this time. "My grandson got married 2 weeks ago, to your sister." "I know." At the wedding, there was a toast. One of Vivian's friends, I don't remember her name, got drunk and started telling stories. About college, about the things they'd all gotten through together, and she mentioned you. I waited. She said what a shame it was that you couldn't be there. That she knew how much you meant to Vivian, how hard it had been for her since you passed. The room went very quiet. "Since I what?" That's when I knew something was wrong. Margaret's voice was even, measured. "Because Vivian told us 3 years ago that her sister died. A car accident, very sudden. She said she wasn't close with her family anymore because the grief had torn them apart." I couldn't speak. The phone felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Your mother," Margaret continued. "She mentioned you at Easter, just briefly, said something about her daughter helping with the table settings. Vivian changed the subject immediately, and I thought at the time that it was because it was painful, because she missed you, because talking about you was too hard." "I was at Easter." "Yes, I'm beginning to understand that." "I was in the next room. My voice caught. I was setting the table." "Then the headache was a lie too." "What headache?" "Owen's mother. She got sick, supposedly. We had to leave before dessert." A beat. "Before we could meet anyone else in the family." I thought about that Easter. My mother's strange expression. The 12 place settings we never used. "She told you I was dead." 3 years ago, before they were even serious. When he first started talking about bringing her home for Thanksgiving, she mentioned it. Said it was just her and her parents, that she'd lost her sister. "Why would she?" "That," Margaret said, "is exactly what I've been trying to figure out." I stood up, paced to the window, looked out at darkness and nothing. My reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. "I don't understand." "Neither do I, but I've been watching Vivian for 3 years now, and I've always felt that something was off. She's very polished, very smooth. Owen adores her, and she's careful, very careful about what she shows us. But every now and then she slips, says something that doesn't quite add up, and I've wondered." She didn't invite me to the wedding. I know. Her friend mentioned that too. Said it was such a beautiful tribute that Vivian had put your photo in the program. I stopped walking. My photo. In the memorial section, in loving memory of those who couldn't be with us. Your name was there, with a picture. I thought I might throw up. I gripped the windowsill and breathed in and out until the room stopped spinning. I'm not dead, I said. I know, that's why I'm calling. Margaret's voice softened, just slightly. Because my grandson is married to a woman who lied to him about something fundamental, and I need to understand why before I decide what to do. I don't know why. No, but you know her. Better than anyone else in her life, probably, whether she admits it or not. So I'm asking you, will you help me? The night outside was still and cold. Somewhere in the distance, a bird was calling. What kind of help? Come home. Talk to me. Let me see who you really are, and maybe together we can figure out who she really is. She's my sister. Yes. A pause. And she told my grandson you were dead, so she didn't have to explain why you weren't at your own sister's wedding. What kind of sister does that? I didn't have an answer. I'll book your flight, Margaret said. First class if they have it. Just tell me when you can leave. I looked at my suitcase, still half-packed from the trip that was supposed to last 5 more days. At the hiking boots by the door, mud still on the soles. At the book on the nightstand, half-finished, waiting. Tomorrow, I said. Good. Something that might have been satisfaction in her voice. I'll send the details to the front desk. Margaret. Yes. Does Owen know that I'm alive? A long silence. Then. No, not yet. Vivian has been very careful about that. But he will, when this comes out. Yes, he will. I thought about Owen at Christmas, glancing at me across the room, raising his glass. The crinkle at the corners of his eyes, the way he'd smiled without knowing who I was. He had no idea who he'd married. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be sorry. Be at the airport. She hung up. I stood there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, listening to the dial tone until it turned to silence. The flight was 18 hours with a layover in Auckland. Margaret had booked me business class, which I'd never experienced before, and I spent most of it staring at the seat in front of me, trying to piece together 3 years of lies. Why would Vivian tell Owen's family I was dead? The obvious answer was control. Something about me that she didn't want them to see, some version of our family that didn't fit the story she was telling. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't an addict. I wasn't anything scandalous at all. I was just ordinary, an accountant who lived alone and didn't cause trouble. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe ordinary didn't fit the narrative. Maybe Vivian needed her backstory to be tragic instead of just unremarkable. A dead sister was sympathetic. A living sister who didn't come around was a question that invited other questions. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe she just didn't want anyone in her new life who might accidentally tell the truth. I landed in San Francisco at 6 in the morning, gritty-eyed and jet-lagged, and found a car waiting for me at arrivals. Not a taxi, an actual car service, black sedan, a driver holding a sign with my name on it. Ms. Calloway, Mrs. Whitfield sent me. Of course she did. The drive took almost an hour, out of the city and into the hills. Wine country again, different vineyards but the same feeling of old money disguising itself as rustic charm. We turned onto a private road and climbed for another 10 minutes before stopping in front of a house that wasn't a house. It was an estate. Stone and timber, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, perched on a ridge overlooking the valley. Margaret met me at the door. She was smaller than I'd expected, 5'2" maybe, with white hair cut short and sharp, but her presence was larger than her body. She wore a silk blouse and dark pants, simple gold at her ears, and when she shook my hand, her grip was firm. You look like your pictures, she said, the ones from the memorial. I'm sorry about all of this. You don't need to apologize, you didn't do anything. She turned and walked into the house. Come, we have a lot to discuss. The interior was what I'd expected. Expensive but tasteful, Art on the walls that looked original, furniture that invited you to sit without making you feel like you'd ruin it. Margaret led me to a sitting room with a view of the valley and gestured to a chair. Coffee, please. She poured from a carafe on a side table, handed me a cup, and settled into the chair across from me. Her eyes were gray like Owen's, but sharper, assessing. Tell me about growing up with her. So I did. I told her about the stories I was never allowed to finish and the corrections that always came with a smile. About the invitations hidden in the trash and the bridal shower I learned about from Instagram. About the wedding I was told had no room for me and the venue that could have held me easily. I told her about Easter, about being in the next room while her supposed headache sent Owen's family away. I told her about the last 31 years of my life, and when I was done, Margaret sat very still. She was keeping you away from us, she said finally. I think so. Not protecting you, protecting herself from you, from the possibility that you might say something true about her, something she couldn't control. I wouldn't have. No, you probably wouldn't have, but she couldn't risk it. Margaret set down her cup. Owen proposed to her 3 years ago, did you know that? Before the official engagement. It didn't work out. She wanted to wait, she said. She wasn't ready. I didn't know. A few months before that first proposal, she told us about her sister's death. I remember it clearly. We were having dinner at our house in Pacific Heights, and Owen was talking about wanting to meet her family, and she got very quiet. And then she said it, that her sister had been killed in an accident, that her parents were distant now, lost in grief, that she was essentially alone. I thought about 3 years ago. What was I doing? Working, existing, occasionally texting Vivian about nothing. And Owen believed her. We all did. She cried. He held her. I watched him comfort her through something that never happened. The coffee had gone cold in my hands. I set it down. What do you want me to do? I want you here when I tell Owen. Margaret stood. He's coming for lunch. He deserves to hear this from you, not just from me. And Vivian. She canceled, something about a work emergency. Margaret's mouth twisted. How convenient. Owen arrived at noon exactly. I was in the study with Helen, his mother, who'd driven up that morning after Margaret called her, listening to the door open and the sound of his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Helen was tall like Owen, with his coloring but a harder edge. She'd been crying when she arrived, but now her face was set. I lit a candle for her, she'd told me earlier. At the wedding, during the memorial moment, I thought I was honoring my son's sister-in-law. It's not your fault. I should have seen it, the way she kept you separate from us, the canceled plans, the headaches, the excuses. She shook her head. I thought she was just private, grieving in her own way. Now we listened to Owen greeting his grandmother, his voice confused but warm. Hey, Grandma. Sorry I'm late, traffic on 29 was. You're right on time. Come in, we need to talk. A pause. Everything okay? You sounded strange on the phone. Sit down, please. Footsteps moving into the main room. I heard chairs scraping, Margaret's voice murmuring something I couldn't catch. Then Helen squeezed my arm. Ready? No. Yes. We walked down the hallway together. Every step felt like a countdown to something I couldn't undo. Owen was on the sofa, leaning forward, his hands clasped between his knees. He looked worried. When we entered, he looked up, and his face went through something I couldn't read. Mom, hi. And then he saw me. He stared. I watched him trying to place me, the woman from Christmas, the one Vivian had barely introduced. Have we? He stood. I'm sorry, do I know you? We met once, I said, briefly, at Christmas at my parents' house. Right, you were. He stopped, frowned. Vivian said you were a family friend. No, I'm her sister. The color drained from his face. That's not. He looked at Margaret, then at Helen. Her sister died 3 years ago. Vivian told me at the wedding we had a memorial. I know, I said. I saw the program. He sat down heavily, like his legs had given out. Grandma, what is this? Margaret came to stand beside me. Her hand rested briefly on my shoulder. "This is Maren Calloway, Vivian's sister. She's been alive this whole time." "No," he shook his head. "No, that's Vivian told me she died, a car accident. She was devastated, she lied." "No," he said it louder this time, pushing up from the sofa. "I don't know what this is, but this isn't. This is some kind of—" "Owen," Helen stepped forward, blocking his path. "Listen to me. I know this is hard. I know you don't want to believe it, but we've confirmed it, all of it. This is Maren. She's alive. She was there at Christmas, the woman you thought was a family friend. She was almost at Easter dinner. Vivian made sure she wasn't." "The headache," he said, his voice cracked. "Mom, you were sick. You had to leave." "I wasn't sick. Vivian told us I was sick because she needed us gone before Maren could be introduced as her sister." Owen looked from his mother to his grandmother to me. I watched the understanding settle over his face like something heavy and inescapable. "Why?" His voice was raw. "Why would she do this?" "We don't know," Margaret said, "but she's been lying to all of us for 3 years. She told me her sister was dead. She cried. I held her. He pressed his hands to his face. "The wedding program, her picture was in the memorial section. I cried during that part, I thought." He couldn't finish. "Owen." "Don't." He stepped back away from all of us. "Just don't. I need a minute. I need." He left the room. I heard a door slam somewhere in the back of the house. Margaret looked at Helen. Helen looked at me. "He hasn't called Vivian," Margaret said quietly. "That's something. Give him time." An hour later, Owen came back. His eyes were red, but his face was set. He walked directly to where I was sitting and stopped. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about growing up in Vivian's shadow, about the small cruelties and the systematic erasure, about the wedding I wasn't invited to and the venue that could have held me easily, about the trip to New Zealand, about turning off my phone, about the call from his grandmother. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he sat down across from me. "I don't understand why she'd do this." "Neither do I." "She could have just, I don't know, said you were estranged, said you had a falling out. That would have made sense. People have complicated families. But estrangement invites questions. A dead sister doesn't." He looked up at me. "You think she planned this from the beginning?" "I think she saw something she wanted, you, your family, all of this, and she decided I was a risk." I spread my hands. "I'm not interesting enough to be a real threat. I'm just unpredictable. She couldn't control what I might say about her, so she eliminated the possibility. By killing you. In a manner of speaking." He laughed. It was a terrible sound. "I really thought I knew her. She's very good at being known, in exactly the way she wants to be known." "Yeah," he rubbed his face. "I'm starting to get that." He stood up, paced to the window, stared out at the valley. "I have to talk to her." "Owen," Helen started. "Not to fix this. I don't think this can be fixed." He turned to face us. "But I need to hear her say it. I need to understand." Margaret nodded slowly. "And what then?" "Then I call my lawyer." He looked at me. "Will you come when I confront her?" "Why?" "Because she's spent 3 years pretending you don't exist. I want her to have to look at you when she explains why." I thought about saying no. Thought about walking away, letting them sort it out, going back to my life in Covington and pretending none of this had happened. But that was the old pattern. That was what I'd always done. "Okay," I said. We drove to Vivian's condo in silence. Owen's hands were tight on the wheel, and I watched the familiar roads blur past without really seeing them. The work emergency had apparently resolved itself. Owen had texted Vivian to say he was coming over, that they needed to talk. She'd responded with a heart emoji and said she'd make dinner. We pulled into the lot. Owen turned off the engine but didn't move. "She's going to lie," he said. "Whatever I ask her, whatever I say, she's going to find a way to make this someone else's fault." "Probably. And part of me is going to want to believe her. Because she's good at this, and because I love her, and because believing her is easier than accepting what she did. I know. He looked at me. How do you do it? All those years when she kept lying and nobody believed you. I left. I stopped fighting. I convinced myself it didn't matter. I shrugged. I'm not saying that's the right answer. But you survived. Yeah, I survived. He nodded once sharply and got out of the car. The condo was on the 3rd floor. Owen had a key, but he knocked instead. Vivian opened the door. She was in loungewear, expensive, perfectly coordinated, her hair still flawless from whatever she'd been doing all day. She saw Owen and smiled. Then she saw me. The smile didn't drop. That was the thing. It froze in place, every muscle locked like someone had pressed pause. Mare, her voice was perfectly light. This is a surprise. Yeah, I said. I bet it is. Owen pushed past her into the condo. I followed. Vivian stood in the doorway for a beat too long before closing the door. I didn't know you were back. How was New Zealand? It was great. Got a call from your mother-in-law while I was there. Now the smile flickered. From Helen. From Margaret, actually. Vivian looked at Owen. He was standing in the middle of the living room, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Owen, I don't know what's going on, but... Stop. His voice was quiet. Just stop. Stop what? Lying. The room went very still. I don't know what Marin told you, but... She didn't tell me anything. My grandmother did. He pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo, held it up. This is from our wedding program, the memorial section, in loving memory of those who couldn't be with us. There's a picture of your sister. It's labeled with her name and the years she was supposedly alive. Vivian looked at the photo, at me, back at Owen. I can explain. Can you? It's complicated. There's history, things you don't know about. What history? What could possibly explain telling me that your sister died 3 years ago when she's standing right here? She was dead to me. Vivian's voice hardened. Emotionally, after everything she put me through. Everything I put you through. The words escaped before I could stop them. You were always jealous, always trying to make me look bad in front of people, always pointing out every little thing I did wrong. I was trying to be your sister. You were trying to tear me down, and when Owen and I got serious, I knew that you'd find a way to ruin it, the way you ruin everything. Owen was looking between us like he was trying to solve an equation that wouldn't balance. Vivian, you told me her sister died in a car accident. You told my grandmother, my mother. You put her picture in our wedding program. This isn't about being emotionally distant. I was protecting us. From what? From her, Vivian pointed at me. From the way she twists things, from the things she'd say about me, about our family. What would she say? Vivian opened her mouth, closed it. That's what I thought. Owen shook his head. There's nothing she could have said that would justify this. You lied to me for 3 years about something fundamental. Owen. I saw her at Christmas, at your parents' house. You told me she was a family friend, and I believed you because why would I think my fiancé would lie about her own sister being dead? I couldn't tell you the truth then. It was too late. The lie was already. You put her in a memorial program, Vivian. You let me cry during the reading. You let me think I was honoring someone who died. Vivian was crying now, tears running down her face, silent. I'm sorry. No, you're not. I'm sorry it came out this way. You're sorry you got caught. That's not. You're sorry Margaret was paying attention. You're sorry one of your drunk friends mentioned Marin at the wedding. You're sorry about everything except the actual thing you did. She wiped her face, composed herself. The tears dried up like they'd never been there. What do you want from me, Owen? I said I'm sorry. What else is there? An annulment, for starters. The word landed like a slap. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Over this, over a misunderstanding about family dynamics. A misunderstanding. Owen's voice rose for the first time. You told me your sister was dead. You fabricated a backstory about grief and loss and family trauma. You made me feel sorry for you. You made me think I was marrying someone who'd suffered a terrible tragedy. I have suffered. No, you haven't. The only tragedy here is what you did to her. He pointed at me. To your own sister, who's been alive this whole time, wondering why she wasn't invited to your wedding, not knowing that you'd already told everyone she was in the ground. Vivian looked at me, and for a moment, just a moment, something flickered across her face that might have been real. Shame, maybe, or fear. Then it was gone. You couldn't let me have one thing, she said. What? One thing, one life that was mine, one relationship you couldn't ruin. I was in New Zealand. I didn't even know any of this until Margaret called me. Sure. I didn't do this, Vivian. You did this. 3 years ago, when you decided it was easier to kill me off than explain why I wasn't at your engagement party. You weren't at she stopped. What? Nothing. No, what were you going to say? She looked away. You weren't at my graduation, my promotion dinner, my 30th birthday. I wasn't invited. Exactly. She turned back. You weren't invited, and no one asked why, no one even noticed, because you were always the one who didn't show up, who couldn't be bothered, who had something better to do. That's not. It was easier, making you dead, because then at least people would understand. They'd feel sorry for me instead of asking questions I didn't want to answer. I stared at her. What questions? About why my family was broken, about why my sister never came to anything, about why we weren't close. Her voice cracked. Do you know what it's like to explain that to people like Owen's family, who have Sunday dinners and birthday traditions and actually like each other? So instead of explaining, you just erased me. I made myself easier to understand. Owen made a sound I couldn't identify. When I looked at him, his face was gray. I'm leaving, he said. I'll be at my grandmother's. My lawyer will be in touch. He walked to the door. Owen, please, we can work through this. Whatever you need me to do, therapy, counseling. I needed you to not do it in the first place. He left. The door closed quietly behind him. Vivian stood frozen, staring at the closed door. Then, slowly, she turned to face me. Are you happy now? No. Really? You're my sister. My voice came out steadier than I expected. You told people I was dead. You put my photo in a memorial program. You let Owen cry for me at your wedding. And you want to know if I'm happy. You got what you wanted. The truth came out. Owen's leaving. My marriage is over before it started. I didn't want any of this. Then why are you here? Because Margaret asked me to come. Because Owen wanted me here when he confronted you. Because for once in my life, someone believed me. Vivian flinched. I'm leaving now, I said. I'm going back to Margaret's. Tomorrow I'll fly home. And I'm done, Vivian, with you, with Mom and Dad, with all of it. Mare. You killed me off, so let me stay dead, to you. I walked past her, opened the door. Maren, wait. I didn't turn around. Owen was sitting in his car in the parking lot. I knocked on his window. He startled, then rolled it down. I thought you left. Couldn't make myself drive. I nodded. You should go, before she comes down. He looked at the building, at the lights in Vivian's window. I keep thinking I should have seen it. There were signs, things that didn't add up, but I didn't want to see them. That's how she operates. Yeah, he started the car. You need a ride. I'll call Margaret. She'll send someone. He nodded, paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for all of it. The wedding, the program, the memorial, if I'd known. You didn't, that's the point. Still, he looked at me. You deserved better from her, from all of them. Maybe. He pulled out of the lot. I watched his taillights disappear around the corner, then pulled out my phone and called Margaret. It's done, I said. How did she take it? About how you'd expect. And Owen. He's on his way to you. A pause. Are you all right? I thought about that. About the condo behind me, about Vivian somewhere inside, about the 3 years of lies now unraveling. I will be. Good, I'm sending the car. The story broke 3 days later. Not from us, from one of Vivian's college friends, the one who'd gotten drunk at the wedding and mentioned me. She'd been doing damage control for Vivian, posting on social media about how the whole thing was a misunderstanding, how families are complicated, how people should withhold judgment. Someone in her comments had asked for proof. She'd posted a screenshot of the memorial page from the wedding program. And then someone else had found my LinkedIn. And then someone had found photos of me at family events, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, standing in the same rooms where Vivian's husband had been told I was dead. And then a reporter had called my office. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. A local news station did a segment. A podcast about family drama dedicated an episode. The comments were divided, but not as divided as I'd expected. Most people, it turned out, had encountered their own version of Vivian. They recognized her. They believed me. Vivian's lawyer withdrew from the case. The annulment went through. My mother called 3 times before I picked up. I don't understand, she said. Why would you do this to her? I didn't do anything to her, Mom. But the attention, the articles, she's humiliated. Her career is. She told Owen's family I was dead, for 3 years. Silence on the line. Did you know? Know what? That she'd told them I was dead, that she was keeping me away from them. More silence. You did. It wasn't. I didn't know the extent of it. I just knew she wanted things to be simple for her wedding, and you being there would complicate. Stop. Maren. You knew, and you let it happen. You let her erase me. That's not. When you threw away the Henderson invitation, when you didn't tell me about the bridal shower, when you covered for her excuse about the venue capacity, you were helping her. My mother was crying now. I could hear it in her breath. I just wanted things to be easy. I wanted her to be happy. And what about me? No answer. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. A month later, I was packing. Margaret had offered me a job, helping her with correspondence and scheduling. She said she was getting too old to manage it all herself. I didn't believe her, but I took it anyway. The apartment in Covington was already mostly in boxes. Hector was in his carrier on the counter, yowling his displeasure. I was taping up the last of the kitchen when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. I looked at it for a long time. Then I blocked the number, put my phone in my pocket, and sealed the box. The house in Wine Country had a cottage in the back, behind the main garden, where Margaret said her gardener used to live before he retired. It had 2 rooms, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a view of the hills that made something in my chest go quiet. I moved in on a Tuesday. Helen helped me carry boxes. Owen stopped by with pizza and a bottle of wine. I'm not staying, he said. I just wanted to say thank you for being honest. I didn't really do anything. You didn't pretend along with everyone else. That's something. He left. I ate pizza alone in my new kitchen, Hector circling my ankles, the late sun slanting through windows that needed washing. Margaret knocked on the door around sunset. Settling in. Getting there. She nodded, looking around the room. Her eyes landed on a photo I'd unpacked, me and Vivian at ages 8 and 6, at some birthday party I barely remembered. You kept that. I almost threw it out. Why didn't you? I looked at the photo. 2 girls in party dresses, squinting at the camera, Vivian's arm draped across my shoulder. I don't know. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then Hector jumped onto the table and knocked over my wine glass. I grabbed a towel. Margaret laughed. The wine spread across the wood in a dark stain, and outside the window, the hills were turning gold in the last of the light.